Thank you. For more on this, let's bring in our panel. Former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. Andy and Leslie, good to have you here on this very busy Saturday of news. Let's jump right in where our reporter Charles Watson left things, and that is, this is not just Twitter's long-running feud with the president, flagging it, now permanently suspending him, but also other big tech companies, Google, Apple, shutting down what many in the conservative sphere see as suppression and outright censorship. Leslie, I'll go to you first.
Well, look, the President of the United States has numerous platforms. The White House has a Twitter account. He has several staff members that have Twitter accounts. And almost every time the President speaks, he has the media covering him, and the cameras are rolling. Look, a private company has a choice, whether you like it or not, to censor individuals. And this is very different because you have to remember there are people out there that could and have sue companies like Twitter or Facebook. They're almost damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. The First Amendment does not cover yelling fire in a crowded theater, and there are many people that feel that the president incited what happened on the 6th of January, and Twitter doesn't want to be a party of that any longer.
Andy, you're a former U.S. attorney. You saw in that report from Charles Watson, Richard Blumenthal talking about the very thing Leslie is mentioning. What do you say?
Well, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, Griff. I work for National Review now. I have no problem with an outfit being into content discrimination. If you want to run, Karl Marx's view of the world, you're probably not going to get published at National Review. I don't think anybody has a lot of heartburn about that. The problem with Google, and in particular with Twitter, is that they're pretending to be nothing more than an interactive computer platform where all viewpoints are equally welcome. And in fact, they are a content discriminator, and they're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with Twitter being a left-of-center site, just like, the New Republic or Slate or whatever. The problem is they shouldn't get an immunity that's different from what a publisher or a content distributor or discriminator gets. If they want to discriminate on content, they're allowed to do that, but they shouldn't then be protected from things like libel suits. And I think that's the problem here. A lot of their discrimination is done under the guise of, we're worried about threats of violence and we're worried about hacking. But we all know what they're doing is discriminating because of their political bent, which they're allowed to have, but then they shouldn't get immunity.
So, Leslie, picking up where Andy left that, is it time to revisit in a Congress controlled by Democrats about the repealing of Section 230, which, of course, gives the shield to cover to do just what they're doing?
Actually, Democrats and Republicans, this is one area where there's bipartisan agreement with regard to Section 230. It doesn't mean repeal necessarily, but definitely revisit and make some reforms. Also, with regard to what Andy said regarding the platform, if in fact Twitter was just a left-wing social media network, it would have banned all of the accounts of, all the conservatives, Vice President Pence, Senator Mitch McConnell, and that's not the case. And I just want to say one thing about Parler. I have seen with my own eyes people that have sent to me things on Parler that talk about people that are trying to recreate January 6th on the 16th of this month and on Inauguration Day. There has to be some responsibility when we look at what happened in our nation on the 6th by some of these platform owners and distributors.
We'll see what happens. Let's talk for a moment and shift gears, if I can, Andy. Let's look at the first 100 days likely for President Biden's administration. He's going to do a lot of things. He's trying to do, from distributing 100 million COVID doses, vaccine doses, reopening most schools, nationwide mandate to wear masks on buses, trains, and in federal buildings. That's just a tip of the iceberg of a very ambitious agenda. What do you think we will see, and do you think it will do enough to really reunite our country?
Oh, no, I don't think this is going to reunite the country. I think, it's a big a boon for them and a big difference for Biden that they won both seats in Georgia, because that creates a very different dynamic in Congress than otherwise would have been there. So what I would expect you'll see is, while they have that margin, thin as it is, there's two things they can do. One is anything that can be tied to the budget, whether it's climate type stuff or healthcare type stuff, can be done through reconciliation, and I would expect they're going to get aggressive on that and try to bang that stuff through. The second thing that would be very important for them is every judge in the country, including Justice Breyer, who could either retire or go senior, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to do that, because they can basically assembly line confirm whatever judges they want to confirm.
Just about 10 seconds, Leslie. I got to ask you quickly, does the Biden administration have an obligation to try and reunite the country in its legislative agenda?
Well, I think any administration does, quite frankly, especially in light of the pandemic that Americans are living through, the physical and economic financial impact COVID-19 has and continues to have on Americans, and of course, in light of what just transpired in our nation's capital on January 6th. It'll be difficult, but even though I'm a pessimist, I think it can be done.
Leslie Marshall and Andy McCarthy, thank you for being here this Saturday.
Thanks.
Thank you.